Afghanistan is facing a brutal winter and is likely to be the world's worst humanitarian crisis within months. That is according to the World Food Programme. The NGO says that almost 23 million Afghans are facing acute food insecurity, with more than 8 million people facing emergency levels. Now, that's more than a fifth of the total population. Now, the WFP says that for the first time, entire cities are facing food shortages. That's something that only used to be common in rural areas. Now, that's blamed on drought and an economic crisis that's gotten worse since the Taliban came to power, displacing an increasing number of people.
Lining up for food. Aid like this has become indispensable as Afghans in Kabul brace for winter. The country's economic crisis will make it a harsh one. About half of the population are struggling to keep themselves warm and feed their families.
We are poor. We have nothing to eat for lunch or dinner. These are my children. My husband is disabled and stays at home. I'm poor and jobless. We poor people have come here because we don't have anything to heat our houses in the winter. We don't have enough food and water. People in Afghanistan are selling their children to avoid dying from hunger.
The Taliban takeover in August plunged Afghanistan into crisis. The US and other Western countries cut financial assistance and barred the new Taliban government from accessing foreign cash reserves. Millions of Afghans haven't been paid in months. And most aid has been halted, except for a few remaining NGOs. Some are still able to provide food, emergency shelter, and money to the most vulnerable. But they warn the cold is worsening the situation.
This year, for example, about 18.4 million people were in need of assistance. Now, with this winter coming up, we're forecasting about next year 24.4 million people who are going to require food, shelters, health, and nutrition. It's very urgent that we need to provide support.
Global and regional powers vowed to provide that support. After a so-called Troika Plus with China, Russia, and the US earlier this month, Pakistan says all countries have a shared responsibility for Afghanistan. If you think you are far away, that Europe is safe and you won't be affected by terrorism, don't forget history. We have learned from history, and we don't want to repeat our past mistakes. International powers say they're committed to find ways to ease the country's economic hardship. But it's immediate aid, Afghans say, that they need to survive the winter.
I'm now joined by Franz Marti. He is a journalist in the Afghan capital, Kabul. It's good to see you, Franz. Entire cities, we're hearing, are now facing food shortages for the first time. What is the situation like where you are in Kabul?
Here in Kabul, the situation really depends. Some people still have money, shops are open, restaurants are open. So it's not that there is no food around. The people that are in a dire situation usually don't have any money to buy food. And that's the vast problem. And that's why they are dependent on food aid. The Taliban also tried to push this a little bit out of the public eye. For example, a refugee camp in the center of town has been cleared where it was visible. So they try to not have this in the city center. So it really depends where you are in the city.
Franz, China, Russia, the US and Pakistan earlier this week agreed to provide, earlier this month I should say, support for Afghanistan. Has anything actually been done so far?
Yes, not much, but certain things have arrived. Russian planes brought, just a few days ago, 36 tons of humanitarian aid, which includes food, but also blankets for the cold winter. China has sent a train with over 1,000 tons, but because the train takes a huge detour, it is only expected to arrive in early December. The USAID has funded World Food Programme distributions. I have seen one myself for about 2,500 people in the southeastern province of Paktika. Pakistan has promised to let Indian wheat aid through, but there seems to have been like a hold-up or administrative problems, so this has not arrived yet. But it was just yesterday announced that the cargo should be clear and come to Afghanistan.
How much of the aid is actually reaching people in Afghanistan?
UN OCHA has, for the first half of November, said that 7.2 million people were reached with food assistance across all provinces in the country. This is, as you mentioned in your report, not that much, given that it's almost 23 million people that are living in food insecurity. But 7.2 have been reached, 7.2 million, and 178,000 children. Small children have also been treated against acute malnutrition in 27 of the 34 provinces. So we're talking about like less than half of the people, even only a third, less than a third, that are facing a dire situation.
All right, that's the journalist Frans Marti talking to us from Kabul there. Thank you, Frans.